Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm great. It's wonderful to see you. I always enjoy our conversations.
Me too. It's so good to see you, and I'm glad that I continue to see you. During this time. So thanks so much for agreeing to come on to the podcast.
Sure. In fact, I think it's like even more important to be present and to be
Mm.
sharing and collaborating with people right now. It's really important for us to do this.
Yeah, I agree. And as I was saying before we started recording, I think the sharing of stories is even more important than ever. And that's kind of how I started or thought about this process after somebody reached out. Ryan last week reached out and said, and which I was just saying again, it feels like so long ago, but it was literally last week. And so much has changed since then. But I think
March 2020 was a long month. Was a long month.
absolutely, oh, we're in April already. And I just thought, you know what? I had such a great conversation with Ryan about not about not about Corona specifically, but just how his model has shifted. And I thought, you know what? I have so many amazing people that I have spoken to, and everyone will have a story to share. So I reached out to you, Jonathan, and obviously we've been talking for a while. We're doing some work together, which has been absolutely amazing as well. And I'm glad that, once we get out the other side of this, then that work will be out in the world as well, assuming that it all still goes ahead as planned. But
Yeah.
we'll see. But first of all, Jonathan, can you just share with us who you are, where you are, and a little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. So right now, well, I'm sitting in a place called Foster City. It's right in between Palo Alto and San Francisco, and right on the bay side. It's actually a really nice part of the country and a lovely part of the state. I'm a technology guy my whole life. I was writing software when I was about 10 years old. And in fact, I wrote a software program that I got paid for. I think it was the equivalent of about $150 at the time. So I
Oh,
was uh,
wow.
I was thrilled. It's like you get paid for doing this. I think I was hooked to technology at that point. And by the way, this was happening in Ireland.
Mm.
A lot of folks who get to know me today, they don't realize, perhaps because my accent has changed a little bit, that I was born in Ireland and I'm an immigrant. I came to the US about coming up now 25 years. I can't believe it. And I got a technology job here, worked for a very large consulting firm, again, in tech, kind of moved into the innovation space, which the technology innovation space, that's a real passion and love of mine. And then a few years ago, about 8 years ago, I had the opportunity to become the CIO and CTO for a city. And I have to say, it's probably the biggest surprise of my life that I would do that work, that I would go into government. But it was a great opportunity. It was to be the CIO for the city of Palo Alto, which is often known as the heart and birthplace of Silicon Valley. So I thought, if you're going to bring technology to bear and innovation to bear in a city, where else should I do it but with Palo Alto, the birthplace of Silicon Valley, and to be surrounded by all these tech companies. And so that was my sort of thesis. Can I make that happen? And I had a 7 remarkable years there. We did a lot of work, delivered a lot of value to the community and to the city. A lot of folks don't realize, it was over 270 technology projects we deployed successfully. Some you see, some are in the back office, you don't see them. I have to say, it's kind of cool today, because one of the first things I did, and this is like 7 years ago or 8 years ago, was to convert the entire city to laptops, deployed VPN, deployed a lot of cybersecurity technology. And today, because everybody's working from home, all the staff of Palo Alto, about 1,000 people, almost everybody has seamless access to all the applications and to run the city. So I'm very proud that we enabled that many, many years ago. And so it was not, should have been easy for Palo Alto to move from the office to remote work here during this crisis. So I'm a technology guy. I'm an education guy. I love to teach. I run a small technology company right now, but a lot of my time is teaching at university. I teach at the University of San Francisco, and I teach at UC Berkeley, and I'm an academic director for a university in Spain called ESADE. It's based out of Barcelona, and a number of other educational institutions. So it's a real love of mine. I'm really passionate about working with students and helping all sorts of people understand complicated topics. As you know, I've done work to make quantum computing more consumable. I've done a lot of education around blockchain. And I do this stuff for everyone. You know, it's not that I'm teaching folks who are going to be technologists. I want to be able to have everybody understand these complicated things so they can understand them in the context of their lives or even make career choices. But the other topic that I really fell in love with is the future of cities. And that came from my time at Palo Alto. And, you know, I thought I was going to just work in the city and that would be, you know, the scope of my life. But we were having quite a lot of successes, and lots of people wanted to know what we were doing and how we were doing it. And because we were starting to have, you know, things work, and we were kind of figuring out novel ways of deploying applications faster and accelerating procurement. Because of those things, everybody wanted to know how are we doing it. And we embraced open government and e-government and the digitalization of government. So I got to, you know, talk about it with lots of governments around the world. You know, it was a tremendous, and continues to be, by the way, a tremendous honor and privilege to do that. You know, basically, finally, right now, you know, I'm running this tech company doing consulting about tech and innovation and the future of cities. And I'm writing this book, and it's called Smart Cities for Dummies, which will come out soon.
Yes.
You are one of the technical reviewers. You're the primary technical reviewer, so that's amazing. I couldn't ask for a better person to do that.
Thank you. I feel very privileged.
My sort of career. Pardon?
I feel very privileged to be a part of it.
I think the privilege is all mine. Thank you. So that's my kind of overall big picture story. Did you want to know about the story that shaped me a little bit?
Yes, I would love to know that. And I know it. And I just think that when I first heard it, it really did, it moved me. I knew who you were. We had already done the podcast and I've been following you along, but it really, I guess, made this connection with us, which I assume, you know, it's not just me, but, and like you actually had no say in that connection either. You just told your story and then I felt more connected. And I think during this time that is so important because we can't see each other face to face. And obviously we have met face to face now. And I really value that time that we had together when I was on my Churchill Fellowship. But I also feel like that shouldn't stop us now. It can't, you know, it can't. We need to be able to connect with people digitally. And the online world has never been more open right now. The people that I see offering, you know, things and not even just, you know, offers and stuff like that, but just the shared experience that we're all having and how generous people are with their time and IP and resources and things. So I would love for you to share that story that really shaped you.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll try to, best I can, kind of summarize it and hopefully hit some of the high points. So you need to imagine that we're in Ireland, right, in the 1970s. And I think I'm around 7 years old. I think it's 7 or 8. I'm not quite sure of the date. One of these days I'll ask my father if he remembers the actual date, but it's definitely the late 70s, and I'm about 7 years old. And there's a whole lot of us in the front yard of our house. We're just outside because, well, I guess it's sunny, so it must be a nice time of the year. That limits it a little bit. And my grandparents have just come back from vacation, and they're hanging out in the front. And my father's there, my mother's there, and there's a few other people. And, you know, I'm just a kid. I'm running around the yard. I'm, you know, running around. And in the front of our house, we had a glass porch. And so the glass porch surrounded the front door, and you had to go through a door and then into the main door of the house. And I'm running towards it, and just sort of turning around and running away and kind of running towards it. My father's sort of wagging his finger, like, don't do this. I can tell don't do it, it's dangerous. And this is what I remember. I mean, I'm running, and then suddenly I'm through the window. I have ran through the porch, smashed through the glass. And I don't, it's a funny thing. It's still so vivid to me. I don't really remember the transition from running to be almost impaled on the glass through the porch. And my father obviously runs out, grabs me, and pulls me away from the glassy area. And I'm screaming, apparently really, really loud. But I vividly remember just it being silent. But I knew I was screaming. It's really weird. And everybody around me looked panicked. And I was getting more panicked because they looked panicked, right? And I'm gushing blood, and it's pretty dire. I don't realize it. So there's a nurse apparently who was on the street, could hear me screaming, and she ran over and said, you better take him immediately to the doctor, our general practitioner, who happened to be just up the street, about, I would say, quarter of a mile approximately. So my dad grabbed me, lifted me up, and ran a quarter of a mile up that street to the GP, and thank goodness he was there. Now, apparently my father had a fairly light shirt on that day. I don't know if it was white, but it could have been cream or something. And it was red by the time we got to the doctor's facility. And we go in, and anyway, he does his thing, the doctor does his thing, and they let me out, and said you can take him home, and they put a big Band-Aid here, and so I remember my mother and father taking me to a store to get a toy, and I got a little Lego toy. Then we went home, and they put me to bed, and I remember making the Lego toy in bed, and it was like a train carriage. I remember it vividly. So anyway, I fell asleep apparently, and that night, my father, I ended up sleeping in my parents' bed. My mother had to move out because I was apparently screaming, like, and I don't know, just screaming. And my father remained there, and I just kind of cried myself to sleep. And in the days and weeks following it, I recovered, and as a little kid, life went on. I still have, a scar here. You probably can't see it on the video, but a little bit of scar there. And so that was when I was 7. Now, fast forward almost 10 years, I guess 9 years, to about the age of 16, and I get mononucleosis. They call it the kissing disease, or glandular fever is another term for it. And your glands swell up here. And from that point onwards, I had a lot of issues with my throat. I had infections and sore throats and coughs, and I just it was painful. And we, got some antibiotics, and went to many doctors, went to specialists, and they did not know what was going on. And at one point they thought, hey, let's take out his tonsils. And well, we said no, because it was like, the question was, will that solve it? And their answer was, well, maybe maybe not. So we said, well, we'll keep them. Anyway, that I think I was then maybe 19 or going on 20, and I came to the US to be a camp counselor, and was going to spend the summer teaching kids tennis and how to play the guitar, and even I ran a little computer lab, and it was like a lot of fun for 2 months during the summer. A very popular American thing to do, send kids to camps and get students to be the camp counselors. And on that trip, while I was at the camp, there was a doctor who would visit once a week. And I thought, hey, you know what? I'll ask an American doctor what he thought was going on my throat. So he takes a look and immediately says, there's something going on here that I'd like, to take a deeper look at. He said, but the only way I can do that is to have you come to my medical facility, and we can do some tests. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was leaving like 4 days later. He says, we don't have time. And he said, the thing to do is, when you go home back to Ireland, you need to do something about this, because it's not good. It's not good. So that kind of put definitely put the urgency under me to now really address this issue. And so when I got back, I told my parents that we got to do something. And by the way, at this point, it was getting worse. Now my jaw was, becoming more and more constricted. I couldn't open it as much as I could. I could feel something in my mouth, like at the back of my mouth. Anyway, finally, I get a recommendation to go to a dental hospital. And I meet with a dental surgeon. And he looks and he says, you know what, let's get you an x-ray right now. So I go downstairs in the hospital to where the x-ray department is. I get an x-ray, to put the x-ray in an envelope. I head back up to the surgeon and I said, here it is. And he says, go ahead and lie down there on the gurney, and I'm going to take a look at this. And I remember him taking the x-ray out of the envelope and putting it up, against the window so you could see the contrast, and I'm facing away, but I knew he was doing this. And he said, there's something there. There's something in your neck. He said, could be some bone that's kind of detached from your skull or your jaw. He said, did you have an accident when you were a kid? And I was like, I don't know, I don't think so. He said, oh yeah, I said, the big one, I said, was when I ran through a window. And then he swung around and put the x-ray in front of me and I saw it. And I pointed at it and I said, that's a big piece of glass. That's a piece of glass in my neck. When I was stitched up at the age of 7, the doctor did his best to remove the bits of glass, and then he stitched me up. And for 10 years, a large piece of glass remained in my neck. So they said, we got to take that out. We have to take that out. That's not in a good place. I mean, can you imagine? There's a piece of glass that size inside there at the back of my mouth. And so he said, we're gonna have you go in for surgery like in 2 or 3 days. We got to get this thing out of your body. And I was thinking to myself, I used to do martial arts, where you get thrown through the air and your neck gets grabbed. All of those things, any one of those things could have been end game for me, could have been over. And so anyway, going to the surgery, and it's a fantastic surgery. Perfect. They take the piece of glass out. The plan was to take the glass through the scar. They were going to open up the scar and remove it. They ended up actually pulling it out through my mouth. So they clamped my jaw open and they pulled the glass out. They did a little bit of an incision and then they pulled it out. And my recovery was amazing. All my infections went away. I never had any more pain. And it's been wonderful ever since. That was the end of that. But at the time, and here's the real rub, at the time, and I was at this point about 20 years old, I remember thinking to myself, whoa, that was close. It's amazing that nothing happened to me between the age of 7 and the age of 20. And even the operation itself was dangerous, at least when they were going to go in here. Anyone who's got any medical background will know that it's not a place you want to be messing around in. And so I thought to myself, you know what? It's kind of a miracle. For some reason, I got this chance. I got this second chance. It could have been over. It could have been over when I ran through the window. It could have been over any time between then and 20. Instead, I continued to have a good life as a child, although I had those issues. The operation was a massive success. And then I was like, for some reason, I've been given this second chance. And you know what? I can't mess with that. I got to do something important. I got to do something meaningful with my life, because, it would have been, wasted. It could have been over, of course, right? But I don't want to waste the time now. I've been given this chance, and so that's what kind of defines me. When I think about the work I do, the people I work with, the value that I can deliver, the education work, it's always through the lens of that opportunity I got, that chance. And so it means living a good life. I don't think anyone needs a reason for that, but this gives me an additional reason. It means, pushing what's possible, taking some bolder risks, And I think ultimately what it comes down to is having a life that matters, not only to me, but to others, to have a meaningful life that matters. And, you know, nobody really knows the story about me. A few people learned it via a recent, podcast about 2 years ago. But now I'm telling it to you. This is the second time I'm sharing it with the world. So that's an important part of who I am. That's my little story.
Thank you so much for sharing it. I really appreciate it. And I think during this time, it's, like we said, so important to share those stories. And, because we all are shaped by the things that happen, and we will all be shaped by what's happening to us right now. And so, yeah, I really, thanks so much for sharing. And I really want to move on to, right now, we are living in these times, and things are changing. Things changing every, minute, hour, second, even.
Yeah.
What has changed for you in the last month or so? And yeah, I guess what has changed for you, and how are you coping with the change?
Thanks for asking me about that question. I do think I feel that it's still early, personally, in terms of what it means to me.
Yeah.
I'm getting the sense every day that this is going to go on for quite a while. There is no simple fix and then everything's back to normal. The magnitude of this and the implications for health, the economy, the way we live appears to be vast and kind of unpredictable right now. So I think it's still early for me. It feels, we're a few weeks into this. I'm on day 17, I think, of quarantine. And, I'm focused on my work. I'm focused on writing, eating healthy, trying to have some good exercise every day. I do get out for fresh air. Doing a lot of video conferences, just like everyone else.
Yeah.
But I'm, because of the work I've done for years, I as a technology innovation guy, I tend to look at these things in terms of what does it mean to the future, and so I think about it probably more than a lot of people. I'm thinking about what it means to our cities. What does it mean to the way we work, the kind of technologies we'll adopt. I definitely think that generally there'll be more remote working. That seems to be a thing now. And whilst the US has embraced remote working for quite a long time, there are many, many countries in the world and that never did and now are forced to. And so that's going to change the game there. I also think we'll probably have to think about where things are made. We can't be reliant on one country for important things. We also need to stockpile better for emergencies. That's becoming real clear. So for me, not a lot has changed yet. I have been working from home for over a year on my business from home. So I'm not feeling quite the trauma in terms of not being in the office. In fact, I really enjoy working from home. I think it'll be interesting to have this conversation maybe a month from now when we have a sense of where things are and where they're headed. I mean, if this is more long term, I think the changes and the impact are radical. If we see in the summer that the crisis seems to dwindle to trickle, and we can kind of restore our lives, it'll have less of a long term impact to others and to myself. But we do have to be real clear about the next season, that this our friend COVID-19 might reemerge in September or October here in the northern hemisphere, primarily as we go into the winter, and then spread again. So, I mean, I think just getting just a little bit deeper for a second. I mean, it's a time of sadness. I mean, I'm sad about it. I'm sad about what's happening to my friends in terms of their jobs. I'm so sad about those that are losing people. The U.S. economy was good. The global economy was good. People were feeling a little bit optimistic, at least about their own lives. Again, not equally distributed around the planet, as we know. And then it all came to a crashing halt in a terrible way. And this will be our generation's war. I mean, the world war. I mean, this is the thing, I think, that will define our lives, just like World War I did to a generation, World War II did to a generation. I consider this World War III, actually. This is World War III. Okay, now, I don't want to dwell on the sadness of this. I'm an optimist, too. So I do see an end. I do see us emerging. We will get to the other side of this. If we are smart about social distancing and adhering to quarantine, and we get lucky with the medicine, which there's an amazing effort going on now globally to work as fast as possible. I understand that almost every medical research in the world has sort of dropped everything else and is working on this. This is a remarkable global effort. Remarkable. Nothing comes close to it. So we need the therapeutics, and then of course we need a vaccine. We need a vaccine, and we have to figure out, does one dose of the vaccine work for life, or will we have to get it each year? So that'll be different. So I'm hopeful and optimistic. I'm very upbeat about getting out of this, getting on with life, and getting back to enjoying what I do and what we all do. I think people shouldn't despair. We have the intelligence, we have the motivation, and we have the ability, to emerge out of this. Now, my answer probably will be different in a couple of months if we're still in a tough place, and maybe we should regroup on it. I mean, how are you feeling? Let me ask you real quick. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think, and my coach Jacqueline Nagel put it quite well, is this collective heaviness that we have. As much as, like, for me right now, I'm used to working from home. I don't feel that different, and my partner's been going out, when we have to go to the shops, and so I haven't really experienced that. But I did go to the shops the other day, to get fruit, food, etc. And that's where I was like, oh, okay, this is really different. I knew it was different, and I was staying at home and all those things, but it was like, okay, no, you can only get 2 cans of tomatoes. That's it. 2 packets of vegetables. Like, that's like these rations. And I just, that's when it was like, it hit me a bit more, where I was like, okay, this is not that I always treated it as serious, but it just, in my body, I could feel it. And talking to and making sure that I continue to connect with people, but also I struggle with, or I'm continuing to think about, my whole life was kind of online, I thought, before, but it wasn't really, because, you would go out, you would have coffee, you put your phone away, you go to yoga, you go to the gym, you do these things outside of your house, but it's not just outside your house, it's outside of your computer. Yeah. Whereas now, my yoga's on my computer, my boot camp's on my computer. This office is like where I do everything. And so that's just been a really interesting experience. And I feel for, or not feel for, because, we're all in this together, but, people that aren't used to working out of their computer in any way, shape or form, how hard it must be for that transition. Whereas I'm transitioning to this next level, and I find it a little bit difficult, but also just knowing that we can turn off as well. But it does make it a bit more challenging. We have to think about things a bit more, like just before when we were scheduling this, and you said let's do it 20 minutes later, right? And I was like, okay, yep, cool. And so that gave me time to do my meditation and my writing, and because I hadn't really, it needed to be something away from my computer as much as I was sitting here, and it was like, perfect timing, right? I needed 20 minutes, and I just put the technology away, just listened to the thing and wrote my stuff. And I think I didn't value that as much before, whereas now I'm really valuing that. And I think in a month's time, we'll be having a completely different conversation. And that's what Ryan said as well. He's like, let's talk in a month. So I think I will follow up, because as much as I feel fine, I feel quite fine at the moment. We're only in the early days, like you said. I was talking to my friend in Vietnam, and I didn't realize that they have been locked down for 2 months already. And they have quite low cases, but they shut the border quite early at this time that we're talking. And just that, I went, oh my God, we only have started to come into this crisis when it directly affected us, right? But actually people have been dealing with this for many months now, and we can learn from them, but also we need to make sure that we continue to connect with not just the people that are here now, but actually there are people all around the world. And that's where I started to realize, or I always thought, and we talked about this, but like internet connectivity now is a human right, because if you don't have connectivity, you can't access the government services, you can't access people's, your friends, family. And I think this crisis has really brought that to light. And we really need to focus in on this after, during, but after, when we come out of this again, because we cannot be in, this situation where if you don't have internet, you literally cannot survive. Like, it's going to be really, I don't want to even say interesting, quite tragic when we come out and realize what that impact has been. And in Vietnam, a lot of the kids don't have internet access, and so they're putting the school on TV. And I just thought, wow, that is so innovative. Yes, let's go to the internet access, but we need to do something right now. And so, at 9 o'clock, it's grade 9 English or whatever it is. And obviously that's not, the gold solution or anything like that, but it's something. And so, yeah, I thought that was just a really interesting, story and how they're coping with that. So, yeah, it was, I love talking to people in other countries to we're all dealing with the same thing, but actually, no, we're the context and how, the things that we have access to and things that are available, who we can talk to, etc., they're all different. So we kind of are having all different experiences. Well, we're definitely having all different experiences around the world, even though we're all being affected by the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you.
No worries. But again, in a month's time, like, I think we need to just keep talking and keep sharing, and I think people are getting really really lost because everything's changing so rapidly and that uncertainty is there. But us working in the future, we're kind of used to that uncertainty, but we need to use our magic powers and skills to actually help others that are just starting this journey, which, yeah, it's such a collective heaviness, I think, but this time to really hopefully step back and think about where we are and how we got here, and then what do we want in the future? How can we shape that future that we want after this crisis? So
well said. Well said. Yes.
Well, we've been talking for a little while now, so we might wrap up. Is there anything else you want to add? I know you had some resources you wanted to share.
I did. No, I it was wonderful to hear your perspective, and I think people will enjoy that a lot. So I'm glad you spent some time on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to just share a quick few resources, because a lot of your audience has technically been the smart city or smart community community,
Yes.
and but there will be others too. But anyway, for government and GovTech people and smart cities folks, I just had 3 sites I wanted to encourage people to visit. One is called covidchallenges.org, covidchallenges.org, and that actually matches tech companies with government needs, and basically any company with government needs right now, everything from masks to ventilators, etc. Then there's another site I'd encourage you to take a look at. It's called CivStart, CIV start.org/COVID. And they've got some really nice resources there for GovTech companies who can help with cities. And finally, a company that I advise, I'm also an advisor with SIFSTAR, but I also advise Urban Leap, urbanleap.io, urbanleap.io, one word. And they have a discussion forum for city managers and CIOs, government CIOs, to talk about issues and how they're resolving them. And it's really kind of neat because they're linking the conversation with solutions. So, if someone's like, how do I have a remote council meeting? Well, here's some tools, and here's some best practices, and here's some policy documents. So just some tips there for people to use. If you can put them in the postings, that would help.
I will. Yeah.
That's all.
Well, thanks so much, Jonathan. We will definitely have another conversation. Maybe in a month, or maybe we'll play it by ear and see where we're at. But yeah, let's definitely put it in the diary. Well, a month from now, what's that? May, first week of May. And we'll see where we're at. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And I hope all is well with you and your family during this time. And we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, and the same to you and your partner, your family, and to the whole of Australia. I hope you'll get out of it well and quickly. Yes.
We'll all get through this together. And I think, the hashtag's been, we're in this together. And as much as a hashtag doesn't do anything on its own, but actually, if the real feelings behind it and, our actions actually show that, then I think we can really make a real difference. So, well, it's been so great to chat with you, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Jonathan. Bye.